They found him alone in the snow, curled beside a wrecked car, his fur coated in frost, his body trembling from cold. But he wouldn't move, not even for food, not even for warmth. He was waiting, watching, protecting. His name was Roscoe, and what this scruffy, stubborn dog had done in the hours before rescue would leave an entire town in awe. Roscoe wasn't your typical hero, just a medium-sized mutt with half-flopped ears and a faded coat. The kind of dog most would pass by without a second glance. But to Max Hollister, he was everything. Max had rescued Roscoe from a storm years ago, and ever since the two had been inseparable. Two lost souls who had somehow saved each other. That winter, Max and Roscoe set out for a short trip to pick up car parts, but icy roads turned deadly. Max's truck skidded off the highway, crashing into a tree in the middle of nowhere. Hours passed, night fell, and Roscoe stayed, pressed against Max's unconscious body, guarding him in the bitter cold, refusing to leave his side until help arrived. He wasn't just waiting, he was holding on to hope. For more real-life stories that will move your heart, hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what's coming next. The road back from Elk Ridge was always tricky in winter. Sharp turns, steep drop-offs, and forests so thick they swallowed the light. Max had driven it dozens of times, so he wasn't worried. But something felt off that day. The wind hissed through the trees and the ice shimmered with a kind of danger. Still, Max kept one hand steady on the wheel and the other behind Roscoe's ear. They were halfway home when it happened. One turn too tight, one patch of black ice. The truck lost control. Tires skidded, the guardrail bent, and everything flipped. The truck tumbled down the slope, crashing into a tree before coming to a stop. Silence followed. Snowflakes drifted like nothing had changed. Roscoe moved first. Blood streaked his fur and his legs shook as he stood. Max didn't move. His head hung limp, shoulder twisted. Roscoe whined, nudged Max's chest, then curled beside him in the cold. Hours passed. Night fell. Roscoe didn't leave. By morning, the wreck was nearly hidden beneath frost and snow. Roscoe stood guard, barking at the wind, ears alert for any sound. But no one came. The road above saw little traffic, and the wreckage was invisible from the road. 3 days passed. Roscoe searched the woods for food, always returning to Max. On the 4th day, a snowplow spotted the broken guardrail. When rescuers arrived, they found Roscoe standing between them and Max, growling. It took time and a calm paramedic's voice to coax him back. Max was alive but barely. He had broken ribs, a dislocated shoulder, and a serious head injury. Doctors said hypothermia would have killed him if not for Roscoe's body heat. Roscoe had literally kept him alive. Max was taken to the hospital, but Roscoe wasn't allowed to follow. Animal control picked him up, and Roscoe panicked, barking, clawing, desperate to stay near Max. At the shelter, he wouldn't eat or let anyone near him. One volunteer, Lila, started sitting in his kennel at night. She didn't talk, just stayed nearby. Roscoe never stopped watching the door. After a week, he escaped. Somehow, he'd figured out the latch. Security footage showed him slipping through a delivery gate and vanishing into the snow. Roscoe had a plan. Call it instinct or love. He was heading for Max. Over 5 freezing days, he crossed fields, highways, and woods. He reached the hospital on a Saturday morning, limping and covered in mud. Nurses saw him sniffing the entrance. When the doors slid open, he ran inside. He dodged orderlies, knocked over trays, searching room after room until a nurse recognized him from the news. "He's looking for Max," she whispered. They brought him to Max's room. Max, still recovering, looked up and smiled. Roscoe walked in, slow, unsure, then leapt onto the bed and laid his head on Max's chest. Doctors made an exception. Roscoe stayed by Max's side, just like he always had. Through every silent night, every slow breath, he was there. Because Roscoe didn't just save Max's life. He refused to leave it. Max hadn't left the cabin in over a week. Outside, the trees were starting to show signs of summer, fresh green leaves trembling softly in the breeze. But inside, it felt like winter lingered. The TV stayed off, curtains remained closed, and the firewood piled near the stove went untouched. Max moved slowly between his bed and the recliner, his steps heavy, his breathing slow. The weight of everything he had endured finally settled on him, as if it had waited for the world to quiet down before taking its full hold. Roscoe noticed the change first. Max wasn't eating like he used to. His voice had grown quiet, and the way he stared at the wall at night made Roscoe whimper. Max had always spoken to Roscoe like he understood every word, and maybe he did, in his own way. But now there were fewer words, fewer pats, less connection. Roscoe stayed close, his tail low, waiting. That Sunday morning started like any other. Light spilled through cracks in the curtains, birds called from the trees, and the damp earth smelled fresh. Max got out of bed, poured coffee he didn't drink, and headed to the back porch. He opened the screen door and stepped out slowly, gazing into the woods with glazed eyes. Then he shut the door behind him, locked it. Inside, Roscoe barked sharply and pawed at the door, sensing something was wrong. Outside, Max walked into the woods without his cane, the limp barely noticeable. Each step was slow, deliberate, like he was heading towards something final. He reached the ridge where the truck had fallen months ago. The snow was gone, replaced by wildflowers and mossy stones. The twisted metal was long cleaned up, but Max saw the crash in his mind, the moment it all went dark. He sat on a fallen log, breathing hard, completely alone. Back at the cabin, Roscoe's barking grew desperate. When the screen door latch broke, he bolted after Max's scent through the brush. The trail led to the ridge where Roscoe found Max sitting, head bowed. He nudged Max's legs softly. Max looked up, red-eyed and tired. "I don't think I can do this anymore," he whispered. "The crash, it's still happening in my head. I know you saved me, but I left something behind. I can't get it back." Roscoe sat quietly, understanding the pain in Max's voice. Max pulled out a worn letter, placing it on the log. "It's for you in case I couldn't do this anymore." Max stood, swaying, and looked over the ridge. Roscoe barked sharply, then ran ahead, stopping just before the edge, turning to look at Max, waiting. Max stumbled forward, heart pounding. "Don't do that," he said, voice shaking. "Don't ever do that again." Roscoe stayed still. Max dropped to his knees, trembling. "That's what you've been feeling, isn't it? Every time I shut down, that fear." Roscoe pressed his head into Max's chest. Max held on tightly and finally let the tears fall, raw and real. Minutes passed in silence. The sun climbed higher, a breeze rustled the trees. When Max stood, his legs were steadier. He picked up the letter and tucked it away. "Not today," he said. Together they walked back to the cabin. Max opened the door, letting light flood in. He pulled back the curtains and opened the windows, welcoming the fresh air. That night, Max built a fire and cooked a meal. Roscoe ate eagerly and curled up by the rug. Max sat at the table with a notebook, pen in hand. He wrote, "I almost gave up today, but he wouldn't let me." He looked down at Roscoe. He reminded me why it matters. Outside, stars appeared one by one, the forest calm and wide. Max turned the page and kept writing, with Roscoe by his side. The cabin slowly came back to life, but not with loud fanfare, just quiet, steady changes. Max woke earlier, brewed coffee he actually drank, and stepped outside to breathe in the morning air. He cleaned the porch, chopped wood, and took long, slow walks with Roscoe through the forest trails. Roscoe sensed the shift first, wagging his tail more, barking at squirrels and bringing Max sticks, not to play fetch, but as little gifts. Max smiled, realizing something broken was healing. Months later, Max stood on the ridge again, this time with his sister Carol and her son Luke. Carol said softly, "You look like yourself again." Max didn't need to say more. Around the fire, he shared his story, not just the accident, but the long struggle afterward, and how Roscoe never gave up. Their story spread, helping others facing darkness find hope. Roscoe stayed by Max's side until the end, teaching that sometimes healing comes from simply not giving up on someone. If this story touched you, please like, subscribe, and share.